Okay, right. How's that? Okay, right. How's that? And now it's down pitched. Of course it is. Fucking hell. Be right back. And now it's down pitched. What do I need to do? Okay. Oh man. Got to start the Twitch again as well. Okay. Fuck me. Come on. Come on. Okay. Is this now the right voice pitch? Okay. Yes, great. Fucking hell. Right, so Twitch is back. YouTube, are you alive? Can anyone in YouTube see me or hear me? Let's find out. Probably not, because it's like 1 minute behind. Fucking hell. Right, yes, we are we are back. Why is it not saying it's back here? It's just so tedious. It's just so tedious. Why does it do this every time? I'm sorry, everyone. Hello, welcome. So, of course, I tested it literally 1 minute ago, and then I went and got a drink, and when I came back, the sound wasn't working. And then when I turned the sound on, or reset it, it did that thing where it changes the sample rate from 48,000 to 41,000, which down pitches my voice. I don't know why it does it. It's some thing with Windows. I think I just need to get a new box that I plug my microphone into. Anyway, that was minimal tech issues by my standards. So I'll call that a success. How is everyone doing in chat? How are you all holding up? It has been another insane week for news, particularly for trans people. But I'm feeling fairly positive and enthused and full of fiery energy, ready to tell people to fuck off. So that'll be good. We've got lots of different news things to cover. We're actually traveling around the world a bit today. I know usually I end up focusing on the UK and then second the US. And that is where most of you lot watching are from. But that's not where everyone's from. Today we're also covering some stuff from Australia and from Poland. So there's a couple of other countries. We're covering 4 out of like 280 or whatever, how many countries there are. So as oh, hi from Melbourne. Great. So we're mentioning a thing about Australia. Hello, Catherine from Melbourne. Though it's going to be a bit later on, so we'll see. Someone says they're using Pokemon as a distraction. I am using Pokemon as a distraction. I even have my Pokemon earrings in. Shout out to anyone who knows what Pokemon this is. A holiday from Turf Island. Great. That's the further away, the better. I hope you've gone to somewhere with nicer weather than here. I don't know anything about Twitch. I don't use Twitch. I don't watch things on Twitch. I've set this up to stream on Twitch, and if you chat on Twitch, you get a different symbol in the chat. Just like the mods, like Silent Adder and Helen Lawson here, both get a little spanner. You get, maybe this is a Twitch one with a little crown. I advocate for you to have a middle finger emote on Twitch. Yeah, maybe we should do. I don't really know how to set that kind of thing up. If someone knows about that, just tell me. I know this is a proper like fucking, I would say boomer, but it's like a millennial thing, isn't it, to not know or care about Twitch. But yeah, watch David Tennant in Macbeth this afternoon. Fantastic. Oh, that sounds really interesting. Sounds like it'd be really good. David Tennant seems like a really good person, and is also obviously a very good actor and has an amazing accent. So I presume for Macbeth he could just use his real accent. I don't know if he would have bothered. He wouldn't need to change a voice. Because I know in some things he acts in, he doesn't do his like natural accent, but he should do it all the time because it's really good. And he is a massive trans rights ally. which is another reason to love him. So that's great. Um, I'm your fellow now pissed neighbor from Canada, but only towards Orange Clown and his supporters. Well, you're not really my. Well, I guess we have a C in between, but I don't live in America, so I'm not neighbors with Canada. We're not about to go to war with Canada, so don't point fingers at me. But yeah, I know. Like no Americans support the bullshit that Trump's doing at the moment. So, yeah. Speaking of Pokemon, I went to my first ever card game competition this weekend. It just wasn't Pokemon. Oh, you let me down there. I was like, someone else have converted to the Pokemon cards addiction, but no. Okay, well, I hope it went really well and it was fun. But I hope it wasn't as fun as Pokemon, so that when you do eventually go to Pokemon, you're like, wow, why didn't I do this all along? Southeast of the UK. Wish that meant I had any access to NHS gender services, but no, our country is too broken. Yeah, that's pretty grim. I actually got a message today about joining my doctor surgery's patient advisory group, just like randomly sent, not just to me specifically, like they're not picking me out. Just that seems like the kind of thing that it would be good for trans people to get involved in, because at these kind of local lower levels they can actually do a reasonable amount of stuff to help trans people. And some of these local level things will just have a bunch of people who know nothing about LGBT people and are not gender critical, and they just need someone to come in and be polite and be normal and be like, hey, we should actually follow the international guidelines on trans people. And that could help other trans people in your area. But also there might be some gender critical shithead on the board and you might be able to offer pushback. So I don't know. Obviously, first, help yourself, as in sort out healthcare for yourself. And then, second, help any of your friends and family in the area who you need to help. But then, if you still have energy and you can do something like that, maybe do it. I think that would be a good idea. Just thought I'd have a little chat before we start onto the articles. I hope that's not too tedious for everyone. Just while everyone shows up. We've got 136 people here at the moment. Hello, everyone. I haven't played Pokemon TCG Pocket. No, it doesn't really appeal to me. I do like the cards having like nice pictures and cute pictures of Pokemon and stuff. Like that is something that draws me to the game. But it's not like the most important thing. What I really like is the mechanics of like the how the cards interact with each other and stuff, and how the structure of the game works. And Pokemon TCG Pocket seems to be, well, we've got rid of all the rules because they're too complicated, and now you can just look at pretty pictures while you just flip a coin for a bit. And I can't really be bothered with that, to be honest. But I'm sure it's good. I'm not putting it down for anyone who loves it, then great. It's just a different game and it's not what I am hooked on. But yeah, it seems to be doing well. I think they get more people playing it online than the full card game playing online. Excellent to see some cis people allies in chat as well. Good stuff. Good to hear. Get loads of messages from cis people allies all the time being like, how can I help? Like and subscribe. No. Well, that would be nice. But no, yeah, we'll cover those things. We'll cover some things. Staying aware is one of the most important things to do, especially if you know a trans person. I think, okay, here's the first thing that I'm going to talk about. I'm jumping in before I talk about any articles. The first thing that I want to talk about is loads of fucking grim stuff is happening in multiple countries in the world now at the moment for trans people, particularly in the USA, but in lots of other places too. When some major news story comes out, like the ones we cover on this show, if you're a cis person and you know a trans person, like close to you, family, close family, close friend, or someone further away, or someone you just know on the internet, or something like someone you just play games with, or something, someone your colleague, don't just assume that they're just dealing with it, because lots of us, most of us, are in some state of stress over all of what's going on, and just having someone being like, "Hey, I know a lot of stuff's going on at the moment. I'm here if you need me. It's, it's horrible. I've seen what's happening. It's horrible. If you want to talk about it." Or I hope, don't even have to say that. You could just reach out and say, "I hope you're doing well," or "How are you doing?" Because I think one of the things that it can feel is that it can feel very isolating. Like, I have trans friends who I know in real life, but I don't see them every day. It's not like we live in some trans commune. And, when you talk with trans people, most of us get this sense that we have no voice, we have no political power, we have no ability to overturn these like tyrants and stuff on our own. And then you kind of look around you and everyone's just getting on with their day as normal, and you're just like, it makes you feel crazy, because they're doing things like taking people's passports away and no one's even talking to you. If someone just reaches out to you and's like, "I know, I've seen what's going on, it's horrific. If you want to talk about it, we can. If not, that's fine." That can make a big difference. So that is something you can do, and it is very easy. Katie radicalized me. Zero tolerance for GCs or bigots of any kind. Good stuff. Started filing impeachment stuff against Trump. The stuff in America at the moment is happening so fast, it's really hard to keep up. We're going to cover a couple of things. We're going to come to that. We're going to talk about the UK a bit first. I don't know why I've clumped it by country. Maybe that would be boring. Maybe we'll jump around a bit more. But I did want to talk about this issue, which is an update from last week. So last week, we talked about how a nurse in Fife, who is gender critical, had been suspended from work for, I don't know how it was described last week, but for basically harassing a trans woman doctor who worked at the same place. So a trans woman came out, just trying to live her life, just get on with her job like a normal person, and this gender critical dickhead harassed her, and she got suspended, and now she's trying to sue them over it. And it was news for a number of reasons. One was, there is always, I feel like it's that scene. Now, this is a flipping millennial reference. It's like that scene from the first Men in Black film, which I saw when I was like 8 or something. So there's this bit in the Men in Black film where he like finds out that there's some alien space cruiser overhead that's threatening to blow up the Earth unless the Earth does something in the next 24 hours or something. And he's like horrified, and everyone around him's just like, there's always just an alien space cruiser threatening to blow up the Earth. It's just like normal. That's what gender critical lawsuits are like. If you follow them all, you're like, oh God, there's another gender critical lawsuit. They just happen all the time, and most of them fail, and most of them don't make big news. The Times will do a headline, the Telegraph do a headline, and then it will just fail and they'll just disappear. So this is just another gender critical lawsuit just trying to ruin some innocent trans person's life, as they, that's what they do. It's a hobby. But this one was different for a couple of reasons. One was the gender critical said that they wanted to be able to misgender the trans person in court. And the judge basically said, well, you know what? I can't stop you. There is a legal bar for what counts as harassing someone by misgendering them, which is, not just doing it once by accident, but if you do it purposely over and over again. So in that case, yeah, you can just carry on. And that's kind of a crap ruling, but it is currently the law. If you misgender someone once or twice, then that's not against the law, is it? The judge could have said, you've actually got to treat everyone in this courtroom with respect, which would have been much better, but obviously they didn't. So this gender critical was allowed to treat the person she's harassing without any respect. And that, of course, got blown out of proportion, and all the gender criticals were announcing as like a legal win. They've had this breakthrough. You're now allowed to harass trans people all you want. Open season on harassment. But one thing I would have tried to be careful on last week, I would have called this gender critical person a dickhead and a horrible person. But it's always in the UK, we don't have freedom of speech. So it's always a bit, you've got to be kind of careful exactly how you describe it. Because regardless of whether what you say is true or not, the gender critical movement has a lot more money than you, and they will try and ruin your life if they can. And, you know, if J.K. Rowling gives them thousands of pounds, then they can drag out a defamation lawsuit indefinitely, and you just will not be able to afford it. But this is today's update. Or yesterday's update. This is this week's update. The nurse, so the gender critical nurse who objected to a trans person in the changing rooms, admits harassment. So you can say that according to the nurse herself, she harassed the trans woman. A nurse who was suspended after complaining about sharing a changing room with a trans colleague has admitted being guilty of harassment under workplace policies, but denied comparing the doctor to convicted rapist Ilsa Bryson, an employment tribunal heard. I mean, obviously, I wasn't there, and I can't say whether she did compare this innocent doctor who's just trying to get on with her job to a convicted rapist. But that happens, like, every gender critical person on earth has compared an innocent trans person to a rapist. So this is so normal. The amount of times I've seen the comparison to like one of the 2 or 3 famous trans criminals in the UK, like it just happens every single day, every single hour. There's some gender critical person calls you a rapist because you're trans, and so is some criminal. So it wouldn't be a shock to me if that had happened, but she denies it. So Sandy Peggy, that is the gender critical nurse who has admitted harassment. Is that the exact words? Admit harassment, according to Sky News. So she was suspended this time last year, basically in January last year. And you know, it's just such a joke. So this person is being represented by Sex Matters, which is one of the big gender critical groups in the UK, probably the biggest gender critical group. And they just are constantly pushing all these lawsuits. They have like unlimited funds, no critical media attention at all. Like the media is not going to criticize this like huge hate group who's just pushing this complete bullshit. So yeah, it's obviously, I mean, like, has it just straight up admitted to being the like aggressor in this situation, but it does get worse. So the nurse lodged a complaint of sexual harassment or harassment related to protected beliefs. This is just, the doctor did not sexually harass them, by the way. That's completely nonsense. The doctor just went in and got changed, just like a normal person. There's no, like, they want to call it sexual harassment because what they want to do is describe any trans person existing and just doing their normal day-to-day activities without any like malice or ill will at all. They want to describe that as sexual harassment, and then they can say, oh, look, the majority of trans people were in trouble for sexual harassment. They just want to define you existing as sexual harassment. Yeah, and she said, admitting she was the only person involved who would have been guilty of committing harassment under the workplace policy. And also, this is another important admission. She said, she's never been scared of Beth, but I was intimidated when she started taking her clothes off and I was in an embarrassing situation. Intimidated? Like, this is, you're not scared. This is like classic gender critical. You're just getting on with your life, going around, and then one person out of 100, out of 1,000, whatever, happens to be gender critical, and you're just doing the same thing you do all the time, just going to the toilet, just getting changed, just going about your day, And a gender critical person who isn't scared of you at all. They know that they are the aggressor. They know they have all of the power in this situation. They know they have the media and unlimited money to back them up. She's got absolutely nothing to lose. They will then say you're sexually harassing them, even though they know for a fact that isn't true. And then they claim that they were like intimidated or whatever. The reality is they just don't like trans people, and they see someone who's trans and that makes them feel disgusted, and then they have to try and spin it as they were attacked by this trans person, or this sexually harassed, or they're like this trans person's being the aggressor, and they know that they are being the aggressor every single time. They know that they're not scared of trans people. All this like defending women from trans people bullshit, totally nonsense. None of them are scared of actually fearing in terms of danger of trans people at all. It's such a load of rubbish. Anyway, so that's the update on this, and we'll see where it goes. It's the UK, so literally could go either way. It doesn't matter if there's a gender critical judge, then they won't be able to make a rational decision, and they'll just rule against a trans person regardless of the evidence, which does sometimes happen. But we can just hope that there's some kind of vaguely rational decision making, any kind of adherence to the law, any kind of common sense at all, and then this case will go in our favor, and then it will just disappear. They'll never talk about it again, and there'll be a new one next week, because they'll keep throwing it at the wall. They'll keep trying and trying with their unlimited funds, and then eventually they'll get a gender critical judge, and one of them will go through, and then it'll be a huge deal, and it'll be terrible for all of us. Fun times. Yay. But yeah, that's just the gender critical playbook. It's how they operate. Okay, we're gonna talk about another UK thing next. And this is enraging. So there's been a revelation that Wes Streeting, who is the health secretary and also one of the media's favourite people in the Labour Party. Some people think he might be the next leader of the Labour Party, and he is a vile, lying piece of shit. That is a fact. Sue me for defamation, you vile, lying piece of shit. But Wes Streeting is a horrible person, and he is not left-wing at all in any sense. He shouldn't be in the Labour Party. But also, there's been this reveal here from We Are Queer AF. Wes Streeting met with and expressed sympathy for pro-conversion therapy parents group Bayswater. So this is just so infuriating. So they've got this handy little TLDR section at the top. Exclusive Queer AF has uncovered video footage of Health Secretary Wes Streeting saying he had met with Bayswater parents and expressed his sympathy for the traumatic experiences of families who have trans children. Earlier this year, an investigation exposed how parents in the group conducted conversion therapy and advocated forms of abuse towards their children. The group was later invited to participate in the puberty blocker consultation. So the timeline of events is all trans people who had ever heard of Bayswater knew they were a load of bullshit. Then the media cottoned on and were like, hey, this group pushes for conversion therapy. And then Wes Streeting invited them to discuss the puberty blocker ban. And then this video happened. And then sometime later, this video's come out. So let's watch this video of lying dickhead, weasel, Wes Streeting.
Balance right is really important, and people can see in Labour's manifesto the commitment to an inclusive conversion therapy ban, also unequivocal support for the CAS review too.
Straight away, straight in there, he's like, yeah, we're going to do an inclusive conversion therapy ban. And we also love the CAS review. We love it here. We love hurting trans children. We're going to take healthcare away from everyone, override what the scientists and experts are saying, get fucked. We're going to do this right-wing total sham review, which has been pulled apart by the international medical community.
do, which I think is an evidence-based,
False.
well-researched,
False.
well-considered
Bullshit.
report. And if we get those recommendations fully implemented, I think it will be transformational, actually.
Well, if you got the recommendations fully implemented, then you wouldn't be able to do a conversion therapy ban, would you?
For young people and their families who've really struggled.
And again, like this, it's the same thing. It's like, yeah, well, we're doing the thing, but also we're doing the terrible transphobic things. Like, yeah, this is, you know, we kind of want to help young people, but also their families who struggle with them existing.
Families who've really struggled with these issues, who are stuck on waiting lists, who are struggling to get access to care, and in some cases have often felt cut out of the conversation. I think particularly families, having met with Bayswater parents, I think that's been I'd go as far as say traumatic experience for some of those families, and that's really stuck with me.
It's just like, how dare he meet with this horrific group of people who exist purely to try and stop their trans kid from having a happy life, and to say that people feel cut out of the conversation. And then he met with all of the gender critical groups and Bayswater and all these other bullshit pro conversion therapy groups, and didn't meet with the trans kids he's affecting, totally did not give a fuck at all, and then describes the experiences of family who have a trans kid as traumatic, but not these poor trans kids, you know, some cases very young, who have a family who wants to put them through conversion therapy. Like, they're actually experiencing real trauma. If your kid comes out as LGBT, if your kid comes out as gay or trans, and you feel bad, that isn't actual trauma for you. Like, you might feel stressed, you might not understand, you might take some time to come around to it. Fine. But it's not trauma in the sense that being pushed through conversion therapy, which is torture, or like some of the things that this group does is absolutely disgusting. So like, so there was, I was just reading this article earlier. Perhaps it is in this one. Or maybe it's in this one. Destroy. Right, yeah. So parents in the group were engaged in anti-trans conversion practices on their children, as detailed in the private online forum. Some went as far as describing sending their children to non-affirming therapists, aka gender-critical therapists or conversion therapists, cutting them off from their supportive friends and teachers, removing their internet access, destroying their gender-affirming medications. So, I don't really like the phrase gender-affirming. They're sending them to conversion therapists, and they're destroying, like, healthcare, clothing, and pride flags. So they're destroying their, like, belongings, their clothing, and their medicine. And he thinks the trauma is the parents doing that, these, like, abusive things, and not the kid who's having to experience, like, finally picking things that they feel comfortable in, and finally being on the right medicine and having the right balance of hormones and stuff. And then having all that taken away by the people who are meant to love them, the people who, like, their family, who are meant to bring them up and raise them and stuff. And like, lots of these kids have nowhere else to go at all. Like, there's a reason that homelessness is way higher for LGBT young people than it is for cis straight young people. It's because of groups like this and things like this. Just a month after the investigation was published, Bayswater support group was support group for the parents, not a support group for the kids. Support group was invited to take part in targeted consultation on an indefinite ban of puberty blockers for trans kids. Like, it's just such a sham. This whole thing is such a sham. Like, Wes Streeting can absolutely fuck off.
Similarly, for trans young people as well, being stuck on waiting lists, not being able to see a mental health professional, not knowing what's going to happen.
Not being able to do what? The waiting lists aren't just for mental health professionals, you dickhead. They are for actual healthcare. Like, that's the issue. Of course, he's always been opposed to it. That's why he's so keen to take on the Conservatives' caste scandal and just run with it without criticizing it. That's why he's so keen to meet with these conversion therapy groups and all the gender critical ones, and so reluctant to do anything to do with the kids he's actually harming, because that's just the decision he's made all along. He's just pro-conversion therapy.
This is a status quo that's not worked for anyone, and we've got to get this right. It's so
Yeah, and you're making it worse.
important, especially where it concerns children and young people.
Yeah, the status quo is terrible because trans children don't have access to healthcare, and here you are meeting with a group of abusive dickheads who destroy the healthcare of their trans kids who actually manage to get hold of it, and then saying, oh yeah, they just need to see mental health people. The reason they have poor mental health, actually, is because their families and the government doesn't support them and doesn't give them access to healthcare. Like, time and time again, we see in studies trans people who come out and are supported by their families and friends, their mental health is roughly the same as cis people in their demographic. And trans people who come out and don't get support, particularly don't get support from their families when they're young, they have terrible mental health outcomes. They have much higher suicidal ideation. They have like lower self-esteem, loads of more likely to have complicating other issues. And then they, this is the whole gender critical thing. They're like, oh, look, all these trans kids are really suffering because of what we've done. Oh, well, we better send them to a therapist who tries to push conversion therapy on them. Like, absolutely disgusted at Wes Streeting. He's such a garbage person. So there's an article here. This is the one that was just being referenced here. The investigation by the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, looking at this Bayswater group, like some quotes here. One day they may thank us for the abuse. There's like this quotes here. Yes, we are abusive. One day they might thank us for that abuse. They won't. They're not going to thank you. Like, we know this from seeing LGBT people with families who don't accept them for like decades, centuries. What happens is either you break them and they don't make it, or they finally grow up and cut you out of their lives and you change your mind, or you never talk to them again. Like, that's just what happens when you're that extreme, that you're pushing your child through conversion therapy. I did so just, I'm not going to go through this whole article. You should read it though, because just to know what Bayswater support group are, I feel like they've gone under the radar a little bit as far as gender critical groups go, but they have had a lot of influence on politics in the previous and the current government, and they should be outed for what they are. There was a section here. Parents discuss attempts to stop their children from being trans, that is conversion therapy, from isolating them from support, restricting their internet access, sending them to conversion therapists, destroying their possessions. Like, this is so abusive. It's horrific. Bayswater even promotes a book called Desist, Detrans and Detox, Getting Your Child Out of the Gender Cult. God. Trans Safety Network, a great group that you should support, which records attempts at an institutional level, institutional and organised harm against trans people in the UK, said, while Bayswater presents themselves as a support group for parents, the findings show that they operate as a conversion therapy activist organisation with direct links to political campaigning against the rights of trans children and young people. Most Bayswater members misgender the children in their posts, so quotes throughout this article have been substituted for gender-neutral terms. It's just so disgusting. Like, how can Labour, the government in power right now in the UK, be saying that they're going to do a conversion therapy ban, and then the guy in charge of fucking healthcare is just sympathising with conversion therapists and trying to push through an anti-science attack on trans people's healthcare, and then only offering them conversion therapy as an alternative? Like, this is like another classic gender critical thing, is to try and sneak past people the idea of conversion therapy as if it's some other third. They're like, oh yeah, when you think of conversion therapy, it's like electrocuting people and, beating them and stuff. We don't want that. And then obviously there's the internationally recommended scientific guidelines for trans healthcare. We don't want that. We want a third option, mental health support. We just need a therapist who tries to, make them happy with who they are. That is conversion therapy. if you have someone who's denying them access to healthcare, trying to talk them out of being trans, suggesting things like destroying their possessions, that is conversion therapy. It's this like wait and see approach. They come up with all these like code names for it because people like conversion therapy was originally a code name for it to try and sneak past what was going on, and now people have wised up to what conversion therapy means. So then they tried exploratory therapy, which people are starting to wise up on now, and now they have like the wait and see approach. They just always try and hide what they're doing, because if they just straight up said it, people would realize what was going on, and people like Wes Streeting wouldn't be able to try and present the party that he's got a huge influence over as being pro-LGBT, because it is not. He can get fucked. And the last on this little section, so this is a cross-party statement from the Rainbow Greens, LGBTQIA plus Greens, LGBT Liberal Democrats, and Out for Independence. And they say, we are disappointed but not surprised to hear that Wes Streeting has met and sympathised with Bayswater Group as well as a number of other groups advocating for anti-LGBT conversion practices. We're disturbed by the fact that Wes Streeting and the UK government have no intention of working positively or in good faith with any LGBT groups. Instead, they choose to do the opposite. It has been shown numerous times how Bayswater have caused harm, as we have previously seen via their work with Miriam Cates, who is a Conservative politician who is like virulently anti-LGBT, and the Conservative government. They have worked to block a conversion practices ban, which Wes Streeting was pretending to want and care about, but he absolutely does not. It has been reported that young trans people met with Streeting, begging and pleading for there not to be a ban on puberty blockers, but Streeting's actions have since proven his sympathies with those seeking to cause harm. Whilst the Labour government continues to work with these anti-trans hate groups, we have no faith there will be UK-wide trans-inclusive conversion ban. This follows on from Wes Streeting's work continuing the Conservatives' ban on puberty blockers and his continued push to implement a fatally flawed CAS review, a review which also heavily influenced by groups advocating for conversion therapy. This is the good line. Clearly, these actions, which both Cass and Streeting have in common, therefore, we call on Wes Streeting to resign immediately as Secretary of State for Health and Social Care. He should resign. So, this is what you should do. You should search this up and read this article to understand exactly who Bayswater are. And then, you should write to your MP. And if your MP, it doesn't matter who they are, Green Party, Conservative, SNP, but particularly if they're Labour Party, you should express your horror and disgust at how Wes Streeting met with a conversion therapy group, and then call for his resignation and apology from the Labour Party, and demand to know when the conversion therapy ban is coming through. Go and do that right now. Well, after this show. You could do it whilst you're watching. Yeah, God, I hate Wes Streeting so much. Such an awful person. He's not going to resign. He's going to end up... This is my pessimistic prediction. Ever since I have been able to vote, every single election that I've ever voted in has gone not just not for what I voted for, but literally for the exact full opposite and the worst possible outcome. Every single one. So obviously I'm the problem. But what that means is Wes Streeting will be the next leader of the Labour Party. And probably Nigel Farage will win the election. But Wes Streeting will be the opposition and he won't oppose anything because he just will agree with Nigel Farage. Yeah, I just don't know what I think about all the other Labour MPs. Like, there are some very good Labour MPs, absolutely. Some of them are amazing, openly pro-LGBT. Hopefully they will make some noise about this. That's why you need to write to them, even if they're positive, even if they're already on board, because you need to get them to say something. Say this in the House of Commons. Demand Wes Streeting do something about it. Someone here saying, my MP is Angela Rayner. Let her know about this. Like, so much stuff happens in politics. It is impossible for them to keep up with it all. Angela Rayner seems like a decent person. She should be, like, if everyone here who's in her constituency writes a letter to her, like, in the next couple of days saying, what the hell is all this bullshit, then maybe she'll be like, oh, and it'll be in the back of her mind. And then next time it comes up, she'll be like, oh, I can't really trust Wes Streeting because he's a piece of shit. I don't, like, yeah, Wes Streeting's approval rating's got to be bad, but, like, Keir Starmer's approval rating's bad. I don't even know how this version of the Labour Party is existing at all. But yeah, anyway, we're going to cover one more UK-related story before we move on to another country, but this one is mainly dunking on a gender-critical dickhead rather than it really being about the UK at all. So we're kind of moving away from the UK and we're dunking on an idiot. So this guy, Shara Ali, was, I think, the deputy Green Party of England and Wales deputy leader for a while, and he is gender critical. He got suspended from the Green Party for being gender critical, and he is still suspended from the Green Party. So it's all a bit complicated because the Green Party is made up of all these different factions, and there's more than one in the UK because there's like a Scottish one. The Green Party of England and Wales, one of the political parties, doesn't matter, it's completely unimportant for this. But he is just the standard gender critical man. Everything he says is bullshit. And this is what I want to talk about here is this is a case of, is he stupid or is he lying or both? And this is the eternal conundrum for gender critical people. You just don't know. Okay, so here is a tweet that I just saw of his, of course on Twitter and nowhere else because all the gender criticals still love Twitter. Breaking. So he's posting this as news. Without fanfare, without formal announcement, Green Party has quietly but surely disaffiliated from Stonewall. So Stonewall are the largest LGBT rights organisation in the UK, maybe in Europe. And they have relationships with all the political parties and loads of major businesses. They're a very, like, used to be a bit more radical, but they're not really that radical now. And they just kind of do some kind of liberal pressuring. It's like a lobby group, I guess. And so that means they end up like, you know, you have Stonewall's link with this weapons manufacturer or whatever. Stonewall aren't great, but they're not terrible. Anyway, there's a big push from the gender criticals in the last 5 years to get all these government institutions and big companies to drop their Stonewall thing. And some of them have, but most of them haven't. So here he is, announcing that the Green Party's dropped them. I was putting motions regularly to conference in the last 4 years to make this happen, but it's happened now anyway. We are not a Stonewall party. So this guy is still suspended from the Green Party. So he's not actually part of the party. But anyway, let's just read his little link. Conference instructs the Green Party, or GPEX, don't quite know what that means, to disaffiliate from the Stonewall Diversity Champion scheme from the next financial year for reasons of justified criticism of its equalities advice, lack of value for money, risk of Green Party policy bias, and overall consideration of reputational risks. So this sounds quite final. He's announced it as news. This guy used to be the deputy leader. He's saying we, not Stonewall anymore. Done. That's another one. If you look at the quote tweets for this, there is so many gender criticals, loads of major gender criticals being like, wow, finally, even the Green Party's given up on Stonewall. This has got to be the end of Stonewall. Stonewall crumbling, totally ruined. Another one bites the dust. That's it. Yeah, they have no plan to reinstate him. That's true. Anyway, so that's it. Stonewall gone. Stonewall are destroyed. 2025 is the year that trans people have been eradicated. But wait, hang on a minute. Maybe let's just see what this screenshot is from, because it's literally just a screenshot, okay? He's not like... There's no link here. We are going to see the second part of his tweet. This is on the 1st of February, by the way. The next one is the 2nd, so it's the next day. So let's just see where the screenshot comes from. Someone found it straight away, of course. Here we are. This is the little bit that's been screenshotted. Let's just zoom in a little bit. So this is a motion saying, motion not debated. From the conference in 2023. So this is some internal Green Party politics thing. Someone, maybe even him, who knows? Someone proposed this. This is something we want to happen. And then they pick some things to debate, and then they decide whether they're going to make that official policy. They didn't even debate this one. Like, they literally just were like, no, not doing it. From the autumn conference 2023. So not last year, but the year before. So this news that he's posting as, wow, my party, the Green Party, which actually I've been kicked out of, but they finally left Stonewall because of this thing from 2023 where they actually didn't even debate it, and it's completely, like, this is literally just someone raises a thing, like, here's an idea, and it didn't happen. So you might think, like, my first thought, because I'm an idiot, and I always give these people the benefit of the doubt. My first thought was, oh, this guy's stupid as shit. Like, he's stupid. If you see his arguments, they're just stupid. Gender critical man, of course he's stupid. He was sent this screenshot by some other gender critical, and he just instantly posted it without asking any questions, doing any of his own, like, didn't check it or anything, and believed it to be an actual claim from the Green Party. Which is kind of possible. I mean, the whole gender critical movement is based on seeing something, instantly believing it is true, and sharing it to all the other gender criticals. I mean, this got 3,200 likes. I mean, I do feel like these numbers are kind of meaningless on Twitter now. They're probably all bots, but it got 176 comments, like loads of major gender criticals in the quote tweets here saying like, wow, this is amazing news, or none of them bothered to look it up. I did scroll through. I saw one quote tweet from a gender critical man saying, this doesn't seem to be true. But all the rest, all of the others just blindly believed it. So it does seem quite reasonable. But then the next day, he replied. So if sometimes people have a momentary lapse in judgment. Sometimes people read something and they think it's more official than it is. Sometimes they misunderstand things. And all, but like, I've done that. Everyone's done that. You tweet something out and then someone replies to you saying, oh, actually, you've misread this, or actually that link is now out of date. Or so, I've not done something this ridiculous, but, you know, you have low standards for gender criticals. But what I would have done is either deleted this and put out a new statement being like, the thing I said earlier was completely wrong, or if I feel like this post got enough of was still like, people were still quote tweeting and stuff, I'd like correct it underneath and be like, oh, it turns out this isn't true, this was just from a non-debated motion, I misread it, I didn't understand, like, I'm an idiot. That's the kind of thing I'd do. He has responded, so this is where it's stupid or lying or both. Vote in the comments. Let's get some stupid or lying or both. You're not allowed to all just write both. I want your honest opinion. But he says, just to clarify a few things. Good start. Okay. So he's going to say it's not true and I'm an idiot. Screenshot above. Obviously not an official statement. It's not how you presented it at all, but okay. Which didn't happen, but from a past motion to conference. Okay, great. So that has clarified the fact that actually everything you said above is just totally nonsense. Disaffiliation effected last spring 2024 upon expiry, was not renewed by the authority of relevant parties, contacted. So this is like some internal politics stuff in the Green Party. Some members are now very upset about this. Think toys out with prams, shooting messenger. What? Because they weren't involved in decision making or were kept in the dark. Don't lie to it. In reality, this is a pop. So where is he? He hasn't really said clearly. I mean, he does say, "Oh, this isn't an official statement." But he doesn't, and he does say it, which didn't happen. But he didn't say I was wrong. You know, I was wrong. They're still with Stonewall. He actually says, in reality, this is a popular decision by all right-thinking Greens. I mean, right-thinking here having two meanings, of course. All right-thinking Greens and voters. A straw poll at a conference workshop in 2022 revealed a narrow majority in favour of disaffiliation. And then he's got little, like, from, not even from the conference, but from a workshop where they had a little vote, and he obviously voted for it. The fact that there's increments of 2% means at least like 48, 49 people or something voted in this poll. This isn't the whole Green Party did a poll and everyone responded. This isn't some cutting new thing. This isn't really related to the news story that he originally claimed was true in the first place at all. What he's done here is he's seen this thing and he's shared it as if the Green Party has left Stonewall. Then the next day he's been like, oh yeah, it's not an official statement. But look, it would be really good if they did do it. Look, here's a completely unevidenced nonsense poll from something from a few years ago where it was just a bunch of people in a workshop. Where's the admission of, oh, I got this wrong? Or actually it's not true? Like, what is all this rubbish in the middle? So he hasn't really clarified much at all, apart from, you know, just saying, oh, actually, like sneakily saying the whole news story wasn't true at all. So it just comes across to me as this is the kind of thing you would do if you were lying, rather than if you were just stupid. Like, either he's kind of trying to cover it up or trying to distract. I just feel that if you were like totally no horse in the race, you don't give a fuck about trans people, you don't give a fuck about gender critical people, you turn up and you look, there's two warring sides, they're both saying horrible things about each other, and you're like, okay, well, what's the difference? Obviously, there's a few differences, like the gender criticals are the aggressor in this situation, and if you look at the actual arguments trans people are making, they're basically just like, we want to live our lives, fuck off, and the gender criticals are like, we want to ruin your lives. But there's another core difference, I think, between, in general, not everyone is the same, but another major difference you see within the movements of the feminists and the trans rights and the LGBT rights and stuff versus the gender criticals is none of them have any personal integrity at all. There's no, like, admission of like, oh mate, I fucked this up, I'm an idiot, that isn't quite what's happened, but I do think it should happen. It's always just like, they always just try and spin everything. They always just, everything is a win. When they lose, they still won. There's just no integrity at all. And I just feel like that is such a red flag for any movement at all. If I came across two warring sides and I looked and I was like, oh, one side is making mistakes, and then they're like, oh shit, this is wrong, everyone, announcement, I got it wrong, and the other side is like never admitting to making any mistakes, then that alone would red flag one of the sides for me. That doesn't necessarily mean they're the morally correct side, it's just one of many possible red flags. But just to cap this off, the Green Party issued a statement saying, it's come to our attention that this post has been circulating claiming that we've disaffiliated from Stonewall. This is false. The LGBT Greens and the Green Party of England and Wales remain committed to the Stonewall diversity champions. We will continue the fight against anti-trans narratives by the media, government and other organisations. Do not fall for words from untrustworthy or reliable sources. So, just don't listen to this guy, because he's an idiot. So yeah, I want to know, What do you think? Lying? Stupid? Or both? And don't just write both just because you want to write both because you want to call all gender critical people lying and stupid. In this particular instance, do you think he was genuinely just blindly believed this thing and then tried to save face? Or do you think he knew all along this wasn't the case and just tried to spin it? Or do you think it was a bit of both? Let me know. I am going with liar. I'm glad you're confident. I do think that, you know, most of the gender criticals are liars. I mean, they lie all the time. Like with this flipping case we were talking about earlier with the nurse, like the gender critical movements, like first of all they're like, poor innocent nurse harassed by a trans person, then it turns out she admits to harassing the trans person, and then they're like, legal win, we're allowed to misgender trans people all we want, and then actually that's not what the judge said at all. They just do this stuff all the time. They just constantly lie about their position. And it's one of the things I always want to hammer home to people is when you read the news, lots of it is just like blindly pro-gender critical, and you read it and you get demoralized and you're like, God, we're losing another court case, they're taking more of my rights away, God, Stonewall's left the Green Party or whatever. Like, most of what they say is just totally made up. Do you remember, I always bring this one up, but do you remember when the Times announced thousands of families to sue the gender clinics over trans healthcare? Let's see if I can find this live. Thousands of families to sue gender clinic. I have found something. Will it load? Oh, it's just on the words. Anyway, there was a headline. Maybe it's on images. Oh, this gender critical thing has it about it. They were all running this story for ages. Thousands of families to sue Tavistock Thousands of families to sue Tavistock Gender Clinic for medical negligence. If you look, there's just loads of these saying about it. It turned out the like nugget of truth behind this was a lawyer firm was like, yeah, maybe we could get like thousands of people to all sue at once, and then that'll be great. That'll make a big difference, and it'll get us a load of money. And it just turned out that there was none. Like, there's literally no one has done that from that story. There's been none, zero. Not thousands, not 999, not hundreds, not tens, not even one. So just do not get demoralized by gender critical news stories. Anything from the British press is probably, at the very least, exaggerated to the point where it's meaningless. Yeah, right, we're going to move away from the UK for a bit. Thanks for all the international people who are not from Turf Island. Thanks for being here. We're going to talk about some more things from around the place. We're going to talk about a couple more news stories, and we're going to dunk on some shitheads. It's going to be good. So, the next thing I wanted to talk about was this. In Australia, this amazingly is actually an okay article by the UK Guardian, or at least some of it's okay. Anti-trans. This is why I was surprised that they called this person anti-trans. This is a gender critical, one of the big gender critical voices. Anti-trans campaigner hit with apprehended violence order over disturbing conduct. Court grants apprehended violence order against Kiralee Smith, one of the signatories demanding a federal inquiry into trans healthcare for minors. So this is what, you know, every country with gender criticals in, they're all trying to do the same thing Trump is doing. They're trying to lie, do whatever they can in order to get the government in charge to ban trans healthcare. And if you have a right-wing enough government, or someone like Wes Streeting, it might happen. And if you don't, it won't, because they will talk to scientists and see that's a load of bullshit. But this person's quite an important figure, as it says here, a high-profile anti-trans campaigner who signed a letter last week calling for a federal inquiry into trans healthcare for children, and a pause, as in they always say this bullshit. A pause. Why is it a pause? It's been going on for 20 years. You just want to ban it. Stop saying all these soft words like pause and, or we just want an inquiry. You want to fucking ban it because you're a dickhead. Just say it. Stop being a coward. Have conviction in your position. They want to put a pause on gender-affirming treatment until the inquiry is complete. Has had an apprehended violence order taken out against her by a trans woman. In December, a district court granted an AVO against Kirralie Smith, the spokesperson for anti-trans group Binary. Remember that for a second. The court ordered her to not assault, threaten, stalk, harass, intimidate, or approach or contact the woman until December 26. You're not allowed to assault her until next year, all right? But anyway, this is that's a good thing. She hasn't been charged with any offense, but it's pretty bad that this is the situation. She'd just been like some random trans woman just trying to live her life, and this loser has been harassing her, because this is what gender critical people do. It's the same as the stuff we were talking about this case in Scotland. They're claiming to be on the defense, and then turns out they were just harassing people. They're just harassing random normal trans people trying to live their lives, just trying to get on with it. So yeah, she's been harassing some random trans person. There's a section here. Yeah. They interrupted her quiet and peaceful life, playing soccer on the mid-north coast for her club in a team that accepted her and celebrated her for her commitment to the sport. She is not a transgender activist, simply a transgender woman who feared that her quiet life would be interrupted, hindered, or interfered with. So, firstly, I totally sympathise with this trans woman, and if that's the statement that she gave or her lawyer gave, fine. I'm not going to hold it against her. But this thing, she is not an activist. She is simply a trans woman who feared that her quiet life would be interrupted, hindered, or interfered with. That also describes me. That is literally the only reason I'm on YouTube or Twitch arguing about trans rights at all. It's the only reason I'm going on the news and things. It's the only reason I'm talking to anyone is because I am simply a transgender woman who feared that my quiet life, playing Pokemon cards and seeing my friends and going to the pub and working hard, would be interrupted, hindered, or interfered with. That is literally me. And to say she's not a transgender activist is so infuriating, because, like, I am a transgender activist in the sense that I do activism and I am trans and I do it for trans people. But it's not my job. It's not something I want to do. It's not like, I wouldn't be if I didn't have to. I hate it. I hate every second of it. Like, this is just true for all trans people, gender critical people. It's not like, oh, if they're an activist, it's fair game. No, trans people become activists just by virtue of being trans and living in a world where harassing gender critical people just target you and try and ruin your life, try and take away human rights, try and take away your healthcare, harass you on the internet for absolutely no reason, create hate mobs against you just for playing football with your friends. Like, fuck off. Completely bullshit. But anyway, as we mentioned, she is the spokesperson for Binary, an anti-trans organization that was renamed from the anti-marriage equality group Marriage Alliance in 2018 after same-sex marriage became law. So we often talk about how the gender critical movement, the anti-trans movement, the current like Republican bullshit, it is literally just the anti-gay movement too. They've got all the same arguments, they make all the same rhetorical devices, they use all the same bullshit, and they've just done Control F for the word trans, the word gay, and just replaced it with trans. Like, the whole thing is the same. It's the same people, it's the same ideology, it's the same reasoning, the whole thing. All of it is just recycled bullshit. And in the UK, they've really managed to sneak under the radar and get the media on their side and trick some of the public into thinking it's some unique new thing. It's not at all. And if you put any effort into understanding their arguments and seeing where they're coming from, and you realize it's just recycled homophobia. But in Australia, they didn't try at all. They were just like, we hate gaypeople.com. Oh, they passed gay marriage. Fuck it. Right, we hate transpeople.com now. like, it's just so brazen. It's just so like, how fucking hell? How do they get away with this bullshit? Australia's anti-gay marriage alliance rebrands as anti-trans group. They just flipping. It's just so brazen. Like, come on, this is what the gender critical movement is. It's like, oh yeah, we were dedicated homophobes, like, all the time, and then they passed a law saying that gay marriage was legal, and it wasn't popular anymore to hate gay people, so we just picked a new target. Yeah, we just moved on. I just can't get over this, and like the whole gender critical movement pretending to care about gay people and saying that they're the truth, just even though it's like LGBT Alliance, like 1% of their members are gay or whatever, 1% of the cis gay people are opposed to trans rights. Okay, cool, you've got some, but they all try and pretend that the gender critical movement isn't anti-gay and is actually just anti-trans. Or even not anti-trans at all. They just lie about the whole thing. And yet, like, the major players in it, like one of the major players in the Australian anti-trans scene, literally just rebranded from anti-gay activist. Like, do you think that the day that marriage vote passed, she just changed her views and became a better person? And then just was suddenly concerned for the rights of females? Like, no. The reason that these people are anti-trans is the same reason that they were and are anti-gay. Like, it's the same ideology, it's the same reasoning, it's the same disgust and fear of people different to you. It's all just a load of bullshit. Do not fall for it. Why is anyone falling for it? It's so frustrating. Wake up. These people are shit. Ugh, it's so... It just makes me want to scream sometimes. They're like, oh, no, gender critical people just have concerns for the rights of lesbians. No, you fucking don't. You were an anti-lesbian rights group until yesterday. Like, what are you talking about? It's like with J.K. Rowling's friend, Baroness Nicholson of Winterbourne, or whatever her name is. Is that her name? Baroness Winterbourne. Emma Nicholson, yeah. Like, she's got a charity with J.K. Rowling. They're good friends and allies, and talk on Twitter and stuff sometimes publicly. And she's a baroness, an unelected dickhead, and has been in power, have power over you for longer than I've been alive. She's pretending that she cares about gay rights, and the whole gender critical movement are like, oh yeah, we've got this gender critical person in the House of Lords, and she's defending women's rights and stuff, defending the rights of lesbians. And she's still opposed to gay marriage, and she was so anti-gay that in the push for getting rid of Section 28, there's this group called the Lesbian Avengers, and they literally found out where she lived and turned up and went and had a tea party in her garden to protest her. And somehow she just managed to completely launder her reputation in an instant. Now she's anti-trans. The whole gender critical movement's pretending that she's some like hero defending lesbians. It's just, how do they get away with this stuff? Where the fuck is the media? Why aren't they... When this happens, when J.K. Rowling's like, I defend lesbians' rights, and so does the gender critical movement, why doesn't the journalist... Fine, quote that. You're allowed to quote what she says. J.K. Rowling claims to defend lesbians, but also she has started a charity with Baroness Nicholson of Winterbourne, who is like famously anti-gay rights even today. Like, just fucking write it down. It's so infuriating. Right, I'm gonna have a drink. It's not alcohol, it's just squash. And then we're gonna move on to a story from the USA. Someone says, Kermit, Thorson. Sorry, Kermit. Kermit says women's sports are to save men's sensibilities. I don't think that's the whole story. um, that might be a factor, certainly for some sports more than others. But obviously, having women's only leagues in male dominated sports can help combat misogyny, which is preventing women and girls from participating. So that's a reason this, like, society's fault and problem. But it's not just to save men's sensibilities. And obviously, for some sports, there is a performance difference. So that's also a factor. But it is one of the factors. And I know that in some sports, there's not really a difference in participation and there's not really a difference in performance, but they still enforce separation. So yeah, that is a factor. Oh, someone say Trump's announcing a new executive order to ban trans women from sports as we speak. Yes, right. We're going to talk about some Trump stuff. Don't panic. Loads of bullshit. There is so much stuff coming out constantly from the Trump government. It's like week 3 or something of the Trump government, and he's issued like tens of anti-trans executive orders. And I do just want to look at this, but I think it can be very easy to feel like it's like an avalanche and it's out of our control and it's happened and trans people are totally fucked and it's over. And you've seen all like the cis YouTubers being like, trans rights are raised, like it's over, we're cancelled. And like the gender criticals are all celebrating it as the end of trans people or whatever. It is bad, absolutely. But it's not the end, and not all of it's gonna happen. And just try, and this the focus of what we were saying every week is try to not panic first. Don't let your irrational part of your brain make any decisions at all. Don't let it control you, and just look at the actual facts of what's happened. So yes, Donald Trump has issued a bunch of executive orders, and yes, that is having real material like impact on trans people straight away. Some people are reporting they can't get hold of their passports, so they've had their passports confiscated when they've tried to renew them. The Trump government's destroying whole institutions at the moment, and that is scary. But pushback to this stuff doesn't happen instantly. And when stuff like this does happen, even if it doesn't get pushed back upon and stopped in its tracks, it doesn't last. Like him defining sex as binary and immutable, you can't fight science forever. They can write that into the law, and then what happens eventually when Trump dies, when Trump gets ousted, when there's a revolution, whatever, just, it is bad. But the reason I want to talk about this story is where do we have I did have oh god, oh no, I've closed it. A bunch of people pushed back. Oh no, it's here, okay, we're good. So the reason I wanted to talk about this is because the pushback to all this bullshit against trans people has started. Things are starting to happen. And like Trump is trying to be a dictator, but that doesn't mean that everyone is going to comply. Some people comply in advance. That's terrible. Some people are on his side. That's terrible. It isn't everyone. Most people are not fascists. Most people just want to live their lives. And lots of people, lots of cis people will stand up for trans people. So here we have Attorney General Nerona and 14 attorneys general issue joint statement on protecting access to gender-affirming care. This is quite a big deal. This is multiple states pushing back very strongly against Trump's thing. So they says, as state attorneys general. So attorney general is like, it's not a low position. These are powerful people within each state. As It's so confusing when they pluralize the first word, not the other one. As state attorney generals, we stand firmly in support of healthcare policies that respect the dignity and rights of all people. Healthcare decisions should be made by patients, families, and doctors, not by a politician trying to use his power to restrict your freedoms. Gender affirming healthcare is essential, life saving medical treatment that supports individuals in living their authentic selves. This is a good statement. This is powerful and important people in a lot of states pushing back. They are not tiptoeing around this. This is the kind of thing we want to see from all politicians. This, like, healthcare decisions should be made by patients, families, and doctors, not by politicians trying to use their power to restrict your freedoms. That's such a good line. Like, they should all be saying that. This is what you should be saying when you're arguing for trans people's healthcare. It's, yes, of course, trans healthcare is good and it helps trans people. But the core issue to get people to actually pay attention, because most people don't give a fuck about trans people, is it's about freedom. It's about people having, controlling their own bodies, controlling their own lives. The Trump administration's recent executive order is wrong on the science and law. Despite what the Trump administration has suggested, there is no connection between female genital mutilation and gender-affirming care. No federal law makes gender-affirming care unlawful. President Trump cannot change that by executive order. Straight up saying it. He is wrong on the science. He is wrong on the law. This is what all the politicians should be saying. Straight up. This should be the core argument. None of this, oh, but sex and gender are different, or trans people are valid. Like, true. But the thing you want to be saying to people is, they are wrong. They are factually wrong. This isn't how the science works. They are factually wrong. This isn't how the law works. They're trying to take away your freedoms. Like, all of this stuff is way more hard-hitting and more obviously true than some of the arguments. I'm not trying to call out people making bad arguments. Like, if you're making a bad argument, just consider making a better argument. I'm not coming for you. It's fine. Just this kind of stuff. This is what we want. This is what you want to write to your politicians and get them to say. Last week, the Attorney Generals secured a critical win from federal court that directed the federal government to resume funding that had been frozen by the Trump administration. In response to the court order, the Department of Justice has sent a notice stating that federal agencies cannot pause, freeze, impede, block, cancel, or terminate any awards or obligations on the basis of that memo, on the basis of the president's recently issued executive orders. Stuff is happening. He's issuing another executive order as we speak. There'll probably be another one soon. They're going to constantly keep trying to attack trans people. Some things will be chipped away. Some things we're going to have to fight to get back. I would never want to minimize the difficulty that American trans people are facing and will face in the near future. But do not give up. Do not fold over. Like, don't feel defeated, because that's the point of this stuff. Like, when they issue 500 executive orders, 500 days in a row, when Trump says things like, oh yeah, we're just going to completely remove LGBT people full stop from all this stuff, like, it's terrifying and it makes you want to give up. But they want you to give up. And the way we don't get defeated by this is to fight back and do stuff and build momentum and support each other. So this is great. This is a good step. People are on our side and they're saying the right things. They're not making crap arguments. They are straight up saying it's illegal. It's factually wrong. People need this. It's about freedom. This is good. Okay. And I do just want to cover some of the executive order stuff. So, of course, one of the orders he pushed through, trying to reduce the protections of LGBT people, at the exact same time has tried to remove the protections from women who have been sexually assaulted in universities and other places. So, like, we need to point out that constantly this stuff is tied together. The Republicans, particularly, and the gender critical movement in the UK and Australia and other countries, they've all been saying this is about defending women. It's about defending women. Now he's actually in power. Now he's actually got a chance to do something. He's removing protections from sexual assault in the exact same pen stroke as he is removing protections from LGBT people. It's the same thing. It's the same people attacking women and LGBT people for the same set of reasons. And we just need to point this out. This is what we've been saying was going to happen for ages. Now he's trying to make it happen. Direct evidence that all of these people pushing back against us were lying, stupid, or both. So we need to point this kind of stuff out. I mean, what they've tried to do here is actually really grim. We won't go into it. There's loads of stuff happening, and there's no point going into the details on all of it straight away. What you should do is focus on the things that directly affect you right now and try and minimize the damage. And then once you're safe and mentally safe and secure, then we start fighting back. But I did want to look at as well. So he's not just removing human rights from people. He's not just undermining protections for sexual assault and not just empowering harassers and rapists and sexual abusers and stuff, which of course he would do because he is one. They are straight up doing like openly Nazi shit. They have ordered the CDC, which is the Center for Disease and Control, one of the major health organizations in the USA, to just delete a load of data sets to do with LGBT people. There is no rational argument at all for deleting data and deleting science. This is straight up what the Nazis did when they got in power. This is modern day book burning. This is them trying to remove any like evidence that LGBT people exist at all. Several US Centers for Disease and Control and Prevention websites, data sets related to HIV and LGBT people, youth health behaviors, and more have been removed after the agency was directed to comply with an executive order. Now, this as well is scary and it is terrible. And yes, this is straight up what the Nazis did. But it is different this time around. When the Nazis burnt all the books, in lots of cases, they were the only copies of the books. Or it was all the copies of the books. Or getting all of that information into one place again would be, not possible. Now, people have backed up all this stuff. You can go and find a torrent of all this data, all the publicly accessible data. It's out there. They can't destroy it in the same way. Sure, they can make it less official. They can take it off the central government website, but that has not gone. They have not destroyed this research in the same way that Nazis did. They have not been as successful. I just think it's so important for people to realize the extent of what is happening here. They're deleting data and research. They're trying to destroy data and research. There's another one here, which is completely related, where the CDC orders mass retraction and revision of submitted research across all science and medical journals with banned terms, okay? So they're completely just trying to shut down academic freedom, which is another thing that the right has constantly been arguing for. We just want academic freedom. We should be allowed to insult trans people and blah, blah, blah. They don't give a fuck about academic freedom, and we've known it the whole time, and we were right. They are straight up trying to ban scientific research into trans people, pregnant people, LGBT, non-binary. And another one, the National Science Foundation has received a list of words which have been flagged, possibly which would mean that you wouldn't get your grant for research. And it's all the stuff that you might expect: activism, activist, etc. Black, BIPOC, diversity, female, LGBT, minorities, women is on the list. Male and men aren't, of course. So I just think whenever you talk to someone, something has changed here, okay? When you were arguing with some lame centrist before and you say Donald Trump is a Nazi, the right wing, the Republicans have gone fascist, the gender critical movement is a fascist movement, they would always be like, oh, you're exaggerating, you're hyperbolic. They just care about academic freedom. They just care about defending women's rights. They've always had some level of plausible deniability before. He won't really do what he said. Now he's in power, they're just fucking doing it. The first things that he's trying to do is delete research into LGBT people and women, take away protections for LGBT people and women, ban grants for more research for LGBT people and women, and various other groups. And we can just point to it. This is what we said was going to happen. This is what the Nazis did last time, and it's what he has actually done now. So, yeah. Is someone trying to message me in chat? What's going on? I might have just misread something. No, okay, I just misread chat. But yeah, yeah, exactly. Must ban the word cis on Twitter. Like, it's so transparent. We were right all along, and it's literally happening before our eyes, and that is scary and terrifying. But they played their hand now. The cards are on the table. It's undeniable at this point. So, yeah, that is progress of some kind. I don't think them taking their mask off and coming out in the open is all bad. There is some good to it in that we now know exactly what they're going to do. They're trying to do. It's on the table. We can start fighting back against it. All of the lame centrists can fuck off and shut up and see that we were right all the time. The gender criticals and Republicans will probably still lie about it to your face, but they were always going to do that anyway. So yeah, that it's the first step of being able to fight back is knowing exactly what they are actually doing. Yeah, just do not panic and do not let fear stop you from acting. That was a bit of a rant strung together of loads of stuff. There is just so much happening in the USA, it's impossible to keep track of. And not all of it is going to stick, not all of it's going to land. And all that matters is, if it's something you know about, do your best to resist it. And keep yourself safe. And if you're someone who's really good at like getting hold of all the data sets and making them available on torrent, then that's what you should do. Back stuff up. It's a good thing to be doing. Yeah, sorry, I thought I saw people trying to message me in the chat there. It is hard for me to read the chat and rant at the same time. I have no use for those data sets, but I downloaded them and will continue seeding them. Yeah, great, good. You're doing a good thing. And while you can do that, that's what you should do. Just making this data available means that maybe someone who can use it will be able to use it. And that's a good thing. Gonna talk about a couple more things and then we'll finish up. So I guess kind of a quick point on this. We'll see how quick it is. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was this. So this is Justyna Wydrinska. If you speak Polish, tell me how I did on the pronunciation. But Justyna is a hero. She is a pro-abortion activist. She was convicted for trying to help a woman have an abortion by sending her pills. In Poland, abortion is like completely illegal. Or there's like exceptions in, I mean, it's not as extreme as in some states in the US what they're trying to push, but it's like unless there's a threat to the life of the mother imminently or something. But it's terrible. There's a ban on abortion, and this lady and others have been trying to help people who need abortions, which is heroic. And first, I just wanted to point this out. So she's having an appeal at the moment. She was actually convicted, guilty, in her first case, but now there's an appeal, and they're hoping that it will be overturned. I don't have much hope for Poland's current situation, but we'll see. But the reason I want to talk about this is first, so you know who she is, and so you can follow this case and support her and groups like her. But secondly, in the context of all the stuff happening in the US at the moment as well, like Polish people have had to deal with this, like crack down on their freedoms too. When the law changes to make something like abortion medication illegal, the only moral course of action is opposing that law, because banning abortion is immoral. Not all laws are moral. And it, like, people will act all shocked, and like, especially right when people will be like, oh, you said you should just be able to break any laws. No, that isn't what I'm saying. What I am saying, though, is every single person, including anyone who is upset by the idea of helping someone who needs an abortion in a country where it's banned, will have some country somewhere around the world with something that they think, with a law that they think is bullshit and immoral, and that they break in the country they live in all the time. Like, they wouldn't want it implemented there. And the reality is that some laws are immoral, and some laws are pointless and stupid, and you break them all the time without caring because they're not enforced. But in the case of, like, if they made insulin illegal, the only moral thing to do would be to get diabetic people insulin. It would not be to follow the law. It would be to break the law as much as possible and to try and not get caught. And that doesn't mean I'm advocating for going around and breaking every single law. Not all laws are immoral. That would be ridiculous. We can't just have that situation. That isn't at all what I would promote. But in the case of any state that were to make abortion illegal, then it would be moral to help people who need abortions. And as it's always tied together, it's the same for LGBT people's healthcare. If the US government is trying to get rid of HIV medication or ban trans healthcare, then the only moral course of action is to help people who need those things. Yeah, I'm sure they are trying to pass a federal ban on abortion. People are going to fight back against it, and we just can't let that stand at all. Okay. So, I got a couple more things. I hope everyone's still with us. Next, I have a challenge for gender critical people who might be watching this. Maybe you're gender critical and you've just been sent this clip. This is also for people in chat and in the comments. How many colors can you see here? Now, I'd just like to apologize for anyone who is red-green colorblind. Maybe this is going to be a bit of a difficult section for you, but it's still relevant, and actually you're an important part of what I'm discussing. How many colors can you see here? Personally, so there are 6 dots on a black background. So if we just ignore the black, I can see 6 different colors here. There's a red one, and there's a green one over here, and then there's like a brown one, and this is kind of greeny brown. I think this one's kind of orange, and this one's like another green. Now, you absolutely, like, if you're colorblind, maybe all these look the same, or maybe they all look green, or maybe they all look red. Or maybe they all look different, but you can't quite work out which one's which. I don't quite know how colorblind works, but I seeing 6 colors and a black background, 7 if you're a smart ass, but the colored circles, I see 6 different ones. You could actually argue that maybe these 2 are both green. And you could say, well, actually, there's only like 7 colors, and you've got brown, red, and green there, so there's like 3. And, you know, these 2 are green, and these 2 are red, and these 2 are brown, but then maybe I'd argue this one was green. But you might argue these 2 are both brown, but you might argue that these 3 are green. And the point is, it's actually subjective. Which color, which category you put these in. There's no hard cutoff, or at least that's what I would argue. And I think every gender critical person watching this right now would agree these randomly spaced out 6 colors, that maybe you'd say there's like 3 colors, but actually you would agree that these are different colors, even if you put them in the wider group of green. And you would agree that maybe some people would think both of these 2 here are brown, but maybe some people would think these 3 here are green. Okay? So just specifically gender critical people watching. Now let me just remove this. I've got 2 layers here. I'm on GIMP, which is the free Photoshop. It's actually quite good. I do recommend it. Just going to remove the opacity of the black layer and reveal what we have underneath. Okay? All I've done, we can have a look. Not done any funny, clever tricks here. All I've done is change the opacity on this, okay? And underneath, we have revealed to us a tweet by Dr. Emma Hilton, who is one of the thought leaders of the gender critical movement, the biggest brain, along with Colin Wright, behind all of the gender critical biology apologetics. And all I've done here, you can see, is I've got the eyedropper tool, this little tool here, and I've just clicked on a part, and it picks up the green, and then I've got the paintbrush, and I've just... Oh, wrong layer. I've just drawn it out like that, okay? And just drawn a circle. So you can see here, I'm just drawing all green. It's all green now, okay? So we're just seeing this tweet here. So you previously watching this, you agreed there was 6, 5, 3 colors here. Let's see what gender critical big brain Emma Hilton has to say. There are 2 colors here. Everyone knows that. Everyone can see that. Asking people where they draw the line between the 2 colors doesn't stop there being 2 colors. And this is a quote tweet of someone replying to me from a couple of years ago. I just rediscovered this and I just thought it was incredible and wanted to do a video on it. Someone replying to me saying, my favorite way to explain how sex is bimodal is to use a color gradient. How many colors are there and where do you draw the line? So the reason this is relevant for trans rights is the anti-trans people say sex is an immutable binary. You're either male or female at birth and you can't change that. And that value is what we should use to see what rights you have. So it doesn't matter if you're a trans woman and you experience misogynistic harassment. Nothing like that matters because you have male as the sex attribute and therefore you should not have protections from misogynistic sexism. That's like the core gender critical argument. So one of the responses would be, well, that's completely bullshit. Clearly then what sex you are doesn't actually matter because what matters is whether you need protection from misogynistic harassment. That's one half of the counter argument. That's true. We're ignoring that for a second because the other thing they need to be true for the argument, as well as it doesn't matter what material conditions you actually face, all that matters is this sex value I've given you. The other part of their argument is sex is binary and immutable. And that is false. And they often will say, oh, why does that matter? And why it's not relevant or who cares? And here is a good example of why. When you just look at the reality of sex, sex is all of your sex characteristics together. Sex refers to a group of characteristics, and that includes genotype and phenotype. It's like the 2 major subcategories of sex. Phenotype means the bits you can see. It's like your material bits. And genotype means your DNA. Both of those things are, neither of them are immutable. Like DNA changes, epigenetics is like a whole study of how DNA changes. Hormones make epigenetic changes. But also your phenotype, which is basically what you look like, that can also change. But also any one of these bits like genitals or hormone levels or any of this stuff, if you just take one of these things that make up sex, one of the like sub properties of sex, that's not binary either. And you can't make up a binary out of a bunch of stuff that isn't binary. And most of it is like this gradient here, where, for example, genitals. You have a clear example on one side of what a penis typically looks like, then you have a clear example on the other side of what vulva and vagina typically looks like. And then most people are at one end or the other. But actually, because of how human development in the womb works, there are people who are born with genitals where it's actually not clear, or they could be directly in the middle, or they could be kind of closer to one side than the other. And that is just part of the complexity and variation of humans and all animals. It's just how biological development works. And what's important is gender critical people might say, oh, well, it's still a binary, because some people, you know, they might have like genitals which aren't the typical penis or the typical vulva, but somewhere in between. But there's still a line in between. And if they're here, they're clearly on the male side, and if they're here, they're clearly on the female side. But how do you measure that? Like, how do you actually measure? Like, it's not like you're saying, oh, if it's, you know, we're measuring someone's foot size, and if it's more than 20 centimeters, then this, and if it's less, 20 centimeters or less, then it's this. That's like a true binary. When you say something we can measure, and up to this specific unit is one thing, and beyond is another. How do you measure penisiness and vulvariness? You can't do that. And it ends up just being interpretation and subjective, like, analysis of what you think the situation is. And so you have something like this where clearly there's green. Like, unless you're red green colorblind, I'm just, you're going to have to go on faith here. Top left, for me, is green. And I think most people would agree. And bottom right is red. Now, you could do an Emma Hilton and say that they are the only two colors that exist, and there's just a smooth gradient between them. Now, we've all just looked at the thing I was just showing you earlier, where actually, I think everyone knows and everyone can see that there were 6 colors, or at least more than 2. Ooh, moving the layer. You can see, so it was just a layer. But even if you just said, okay, brown's not a color for whatever reason, we're going to say that there is only 2 colors here. Where's the green start? Like here or here? Like, which pixels on this gradient are green and which ones are red? If it's a binary, you should be able to just sort them. And what's really important here as well, you could make a binary. Like, this is a computer monitor, and each one of these pixels just has a value, just a number to it, of how much green, how much red, and how much blue. And you could just say, if the red's more than the green, it's red, and if the green's more than the red, it's green. That's not the best way to describe it, but you can literally just give it a numerical value, and you could make that, like, claim. But that's because we can measure the value assigned to the pixel, but all the screens are going to look different, and the colors are going to shine in different amounts depending on what is used, whether it's like LEDs or whatever are creating these colors. And who's to say that these RGB values are, you know, they are something we've discretized? They're not, like, color itself isn't discrete units. You can't just give colors numbers in real life. That only happens because it's on a computer, which is something we've created, which tries to represent as much colors that your brain gets tricked into thinking it's a smooth gradient. Who would decide? Who makes this decision? It's not a naturally occurring thing. It's not it's not naturally, oh yeah, this one is naturally green. It's just true of the universe, and this one is red, true of the universe. It's literally about how your eyes interpret the wavelengths of the light. And we've just decided that there are 3 colors because we happen to have 3 different things in our eyes which can pick up 3 different colors. we've decided there's 3 primary colors and 3 secondary colors, and then brown and black and white and stuff. But there's no like natural law deciding that. It's a human interpretation, which is like deciding which genitals are which, and there's no reason why we would say there's only penis and only vagina, and then the things in the middle are should be one or the other. Oh, maybe it should be this or maybe it should be that. Like the reason that we don't just have a new classification is because it's atypical enough, and some of the people, at least, who are born with that want to have one or the other, that they just get put in a box. Though that does lead to intersex genital mutilation on children, which is horrific, where they just pick a category for you and assign it to you regardless of what you want, and then often lie about it to you for a large portion of your life until you find out. But again, this is only one of the properties, and it's just illuminating how ridiculous. It's of course retweeted by Graham Linhan as well. Illuminated how ridiculous the gender critical worldview is, that you have to say there are 2 colors here, that everyone knows that. That just is not true. It's just so rubbish, and it just shows how they believe things that are subjective are objective, and how things that are descriptive are prescriptive, and how their worldview just does not allow you to approach reality and acknowledge that the best we can do is create human categories for it. The best we can do is categorize it. They don't think that humans are categorizing things. They think these categories exist naturally without human intervention at all. And it's just embarrassing. Like, aren't you a bit embarrassed? I went and had a look, by the way. This is a screenshot because this person's account's been deleted because, you know, classic Elon Musk. They probably said the word cis. Her tweet is still up. Like, no shame at all. Just humiliating that these are the things. If you're gender critical and you're watching this and you started off and you were like, oh, this is a trick, but yeah, okay, I agree with Kater that there's 6 colors or whatever. And now you're faced with... I can't get rid of it. I probably can. And now you're faced with like, this is Dr. Emma Hilton here saying that one of the best gender critical mind on defining sex as a binary, although she still can't actually give a binary definition for it, as just making these ridiculous claims. Look what they're forced to do. Like, do you want to defend this? Some gender critical people watching this will be like, yeah, she is right all along, and what I said to myself earlier that I've colours, I know that never happened. But some will be like, okay, I can't defend this, but sex is still binary. In the way that this person has said, where do you draw the line? Like she said, asking people where to draw the line doesn't stop there being 2 colours. Well, no, asking where to draw the line doesn't. Asking where to draw the line actually conceded that there is 2 colours and is saying, where do you actually draw the line between red and green? Even if there is just 2 colours here, what is this pixel here? Is this red or green? Who decides? So even if we were to say there is only 2 sexes and you accept that it's not a binary, or it's there's no exceptions, if you say, okay, there are some exceptions and people in the middle, which does actually make it non-binary, but we'll come on to that in the next section. If you accept that you've got to draw a line somewhere, who is drawing the line? The categories of sex that you believe are like natural components of the universe, natural categories. If we're having to draw a line at all, then they're not natural categories in the way that, like, the difference between a photon and an electron are. There's no one trying to draw the line between those things. And also the reality is, why is there only 2 colours here when we could earlier pick out 6 colours? It's just a matter of who's categorising it and what people decide is normal. And that's all the trans rights position on sex and biology is. But we're going to come on to an argument in a second about that. And it's going to be the last thing we cover. I'm just going to have another drink. My voice is running out of juice. We're just going to dunk on an idiot. It's going to be good, okay? Someone saying, did I miss the genital measuring? Yeah, you did. Poppy's turned up for it. Poppy's doing well. She's got like a cyst or something down here, like a lump. If you can see that. Sorry, Pops. But it's benign, so she's doing okay. So, last week we were dunking on Colin Wright, who is the other, well, one of the other major gender critical biology apologists who believe that sex is binary. And it's actually very easy to argue when someone says something is binary by just coming up with an example that doesn't fit into the binary. Like that instantly makes it not a binary. That's literally what the word binary means. It means two things. It doesn't mean, well, usually two things, but sometimes three things. But you can impose a binary model on top of data that isn't binary and just make assumptions. Anyway, a common response to pointing out that there are examples of people who don't fit into the binary gender critical people claim exists is this argument. And I've seen this argument 100,000 times, so many times. And why it's so infuriating is that it's literally a counter argument to gender critical. Okay, so I posted the video, which you should all go and watch if you haven't watched already. Me dunking on Colin Wright. And then this person, just a gender critical person, no one of note, said this thing. And this is like a stock answer. I don't know who taught them this. This must be on some gender critical blog or something. But they all come out with this, and it is so stupid. So they've said, but answer this question now. Are humans not bipedal? Because some people are born with one or no legs because of a disorder. Is the number of legs in humans on a spectrum? Like I've seen gender critical people saying this, honestly, thousands of times. And I can't get over how this is like this would be a good thing, example for me to say to them to show that their worldview doesn't make sense. Like, this is such a good counter argument to the thing they're trying to defend. It's just unbelievable that they don't understand what argument they're making. I just, what the hell? Like, why do they all keep making the same stupid mistake? Okay, so I just wanted to address it. Poppy. Sorry, she's shredding my tights. Yeah, so I just wanted to address this argument because it's just embarrassing that they all keep doing this, and maybe you can send it to them because people don't always quite know how to respond. So, the question, are humans bipedal, or do humans have two legs? If you answer that, yes, I'll do. If you're an alien and you turned up on Earth and you were like, describe humans to me, and you were like, do humans have, no, and you said, humans have two legs, and it was like, oh, okay, cool. That's true enough. And if the alien was like, well, it's a human with one leg, so is that, or there's a thing with one leg, is that human? You'd be like, oh, yeah. I just meant most humans have two legs. It's typical, it's common. Such a majority of humans have two legs that we'd just say humans have two legs. But I'm not strictly asserting that humans all have two legs. I'm not saying if this thing in front of me does not have two legs, it is not human. Because that would be insane. Because there are some people who do not have two legs. That's just observably true. So the statement, humans have true legs, is generally true. It's true in most cases, but it is not strictly true. Okay? Which is exactly the same as the claim that humans are male or female. Most humans fall into one of two common patterns for sex characteristics. That doesn't mean they all do. It's not strictly true to say humans fit into a binary with no exceptions, which would be the same as saying all humans have two legs, no exceptions. Because that's just observably not true, okay? So when you say, if you say to a kid's like, how many legs does a human have? You go, 2. And then when you get a bit older, you say, but some people don't have 2 legs. And you should be considerate of them too. And then when a kid says, how many sexes are there or whatever, they probably wouldn't say that, but like, what's a boy and what's a girl? You'd just be like, well, most people are either boys or girls. There you go. And then when you get a bit older, you'd be like, oh, well, actually, it's a bit more complicated than that. Not everyone fits into one of these 2 boxes. Most people do, but not everyone does. So this is a good example. This is where this argument, like how many legs does a human have, is a really good example of showing why gender critical ideology is bullshit. Gender critical doesn't rely on the fact that most people fit into one of 2 boxes, but not everyone. That is the crazy woke TRA mind virus position. That is the position that I hold. Most people fit into one of 2, vaguely defined boxes, but not everyone. Just a quite a small minority of people don't fit into those things. Just like most people have 2 legs, but not everyone does. And there's no value judgment on that. People with a different number of legs than 2 should have just as much rights and freedom as everyone else. Just like everyone who doesn't fit neatly into one of the 2 most common sex characteristic setups should have the same rights and respect as everyone else. I just can't believe that they can't see the comparison. And it's like, you might say, like the common pushback would be like, oh, okay, yeah, I accept that sex, there are some people who don't fit into one of 2 boxes, but it's still binary. Like, what are you talking about? No, that literally means it is not binary, okay? Binary means 2. And we can just ignore the word at all. Okay, fuck it. Let's just concede that the word binary has changed meanings. And now it means 2 with exceptions. The point is, gender critical ideology relies on there being only 2 boxes, and everyone must be put into one or the other one, and they can't move boxes at all. And there can be no room for subjective interpretation on which box someone's in. Because when a trans person is saying, well, the material reality around me and how my life is actually affected by how society interacts with me means that I should have women's rights, gender critical people will say, no, you can't. That's because you're in this box and you cannot move box. Like, they're saying that what is important is this value of sex and not your material conditions. But they're also trying to claim that you do neatly fall into this box, sex that they've defined. And if you say, well, hang on a minute, what is the criteria to be in this box? They can't tell you. They can't give a binary definition. They're always going to give one with exceptions. And as soon as it has exceptions, you're like, well, why aren't I one of the exceptions? And they'll be like, oh, because you're not intersex and you're a trans person. What is it that makes these intersex people that you can't put into the boxes, your stupid boxes, you're insisting there's only 2 of, but actually there's people who don't fit into them, so there's at least 3. But what is it that causes... and where do you put these people? Like, you're trying to insist that the law will only be male and female, like Donald Trump's just written into law, or tried to write into law. Where do you put the people who don't fit into that? And some gender criticals would say, oh, we'll let them decide. So why are we letting some people decide some subjective decisions and not others? What line can you draw between them, other than the fact that you're disgusted by trans people and try to pretend that intersex people don't exist? What if someone is trans and intersex? Which of them takes precedent? You don't want to let trans people decide, but you do want to let intersex people decide. So do they now get a free pass? For what reason? Which characteristic combinations allow them to count as intersex in that they can make a decision, and which don't? And if you're allowing someone who is intersex to be in the category of female, and they don't have one of the things that you would typically associate with female people. And then you have a trans person who is exactly the same sex characteristics, but they transitioned to get there rather than not transitioning to get there. They just have the exact same sex characteristics as these two people, and you're putting them in two different boxes. How can you possibly justify that? Like, if you have a cis woman with XY chromosomes and who doesn't have a uterus or ovaries, which is true of some people, and then you have a trans woman who is exactly the same and has those same characteristics, why are you putting one of them in one box and one in the other? What is it that I'm just asking for them to give a fucking definition? Like, they constantly are saying it's binary, then they concede it has exceptions, then they roll back on that and say it doesn't have exceptions, it's a true binary. Then they're trying to push in law for just having two categories, and they're like, oh yeah, maybe there's some people who don't fit and we can let them choose. Like, Dr. Emma Hilton famously said that someone can be an honorary woman. It's like, why can some people be an honorary woman and others can't? Why is this your stupid categorization system, which you still, none of them can give an actual definition for? None of them can just be like, oh yeah, well, if you have a Y chromosome, you're a man, and if you don't, you're not. Because they know there are counterexamples for that. So they just don't give you a definition, and they say things like, oh, well, it's easy. Everyone knows. All the scientists know. Oh, it's about what you would have if you if you didn't have it different. It's gamete potential. Like, constantly trying to hand wave it away. They can't come up with this category at all. And then they're trying to make the laws based on it. It's just so infuriating. And then they come out with this stuff and it argues against their own fucking position. Like, oh man, I just cannot believe that we're in a situation where people are arguing against their own positions without even realizing it, arguing for something which they can't define, and somehow they're the ones with the political power. It's unbelievable. So infuriating. How's everyone in chat doing? How are you all doing? That was the last thing I wanted to cover this week. I hope we had a good time. Any definition of fish that includes all fish species will also include all other animals. Yeah, that's a good example. Species. The classic gender critical argument. Adult, human, female. Okay, we're having a big argument about what female means, and actually somehow you can't give me a definition of female or male which actually splits everyone into one of those two boxes without having some grey area in the middle where you have to let people arbitrarily decide, and then you say, no, we're allowed to arbitrarily decide for these people but not for these people. We're having this big argument about female. What about the other two? Try giving me a biological definition of species which includes all humans who have ever existed and excludes all non-humans which have ever existed. Because actually, when you go back in time, at some point, we evolved from a different species. And now we have humans, and before that, we didn't have humans, and we had something else. When was the first one? You absolutely cannot say, because that is not how species works. There is not a discrete change from one to the other. There's not the first non-human gave birth to the first human. It's a grey area. What counts as a human, like, that happened over thousands of years, and you can't pinpoint where the exact first one was. And if you really want to have a difficult argument with some bigoted shithead and they will say horrific things instantly, try and get them to give a biological, because they're obsessed with biological definitions because they want to pretend that their stupid cult ideology is based in science rather than just based in disgust. Try and get them to give you a biological definition of adult, because one, they won't be able to, and two, it will be disgusting almost instantly. There isn't a biological definition of adult. There is not one. And whatever one you come up with is going to be grim. In the UK, the definition of an adult is someone who is 18 years old to the day. In other places, it's 21. In some places, it is much lower than 18, and then that isn't necessarily... That's pretty grim. So, if none of the three words that you're claiming are a true natural law category, You can't give me a definition for any of the three of them. All of them have grey areas. All of them have exceptions to whatever possible definition you're going to give me. How can you claim that your category is a natural category? How can you claim that that category is more important than the material reality that people are experiencing? That you can't even give me a definition for adult, human, or female, and yet you're trying to say that I shouldn't have protections from sexism at work because I don't fit your definitions, even though you don't have any? Fuck off. Yeah. Completely ridiculous. Yeah, and some of them are trying to claim it's 25 years old for an adult. Who's claiming that you're not an adult until you're 25? Like, you can go to war, you can, like, you know, get shot at trying to defend your country by invading another country. You can drive a car, you can get married, but you don't count as an adult, so therefore you can't have trans healthcare. Yeah, very convenient. It's such a ridiculous ideology. It just does not stand up to any scrutiny at all. And the fact that the media doesn't constantly rinse gender critical people is a travesty. That is all my voice can handle this week. I hope everyone's doing well. I'm doing well. I'm looking forward to doing some nice things over the next few days. Yesterday I went to the gym. I've only just started going to the gym. My legs hurt, my bum hurts from gymming. So that's good. I'm trying not to let the news crush me so that I have energy for this and other activism. And that is what you should be doing too. Write a letter to your MP if you are British and tell them that Wes Streeting should resign. But yeah, I think I'm going to call it there. Thank you very much, everyone. And, wait, no, I'm not having this. Someone says, all research actually says that the certain areas of the brain aren't fully developed until you're 25 because they only looked, because they only looked at people up to 25. So when do they finish development? Sorry, I thought you were making the bad claim there, but you were calling it out. Yeah, it's like this classic gender critical thing. Your brain doesn't stop developing till you're 25. Well, actually, my brain carried on developing till I'm 35, which is what I am now. Gender critical brains maybe stop developing when they're 16 or whatever, but your brain's always developing. That's what it does. That's what learning is. That's what growing is. Your brain constantly develops until it degenerates and you die. And even when it's degenerating, that's a form of development. Yeah, they are just making up completely arbitrary excuses to try and hurt trans people. If you once you realize that everything gender critical people say is just a lie to justify hurting trans people, the whole ideology makes a lot more sense, becomes a lot less important. It's an internally contradictory mess, and you can understand the motivations a lot better and predict what they're going to do a lot better. But yeah, thanks very much, everyone. I will see you all next week. Same time, 8 p.m. UK time, whatever that is in your time zone. And look out for all the videos as they come out in the week. I really appreciate it if you like and share them and stuff. Or if you... Actually, what I also appreciate is if you message me and say, Katie, your last video was actually rubbish because here's this thing you could do better. Or you were wrong. And if I'm wrong, then I won't put out some lame tweet saying, actually, this poll I did on my Discord with 3 people in showed that I was right, like the guy we talked about earlier. I just want to get better. So thanks for any and all feedback. Yeah, no, the tech issues. Yeah, I'll sort out the tech issues. I'll sort of the tech issues. €6 from Alba. Oh God, I can't even fucking read now. Exactly. Thank you for this great stream. No worries. Thanks for being